Well, welcome once again to Where Are They Now? And as we've been promoting here for the last hour or so, joining us is somebody I think our listeners are aware of. The name Britton Abbot ought to ring a bell. Not too far removed from playing Cowboy back here at Oklahoma State. And we're going to get into football, no doubt about that. But as I teased before, you're trying to get into bobsledding on an Olympic level.
That's right.
Tell me how that works.
Well, you push a sled and you hop in it and you go down the hill.
It's just that simple.
That's just about that.
Now, how does it work for you to get involved in that?
So it's kind of like how the old saying goes, it's all who you know. And, you know, my dad coached at University of Tulsa. One of his players got into the bobsled world, and he won a couple medals for USA, and he kind of reached out after I didn't hear any more calls from NFL teams, and he said, hey, you need to give this a try. You know, then this thing called COVID-19 comes along. Yeah. Kind of throws a wrench in everyone's plans, and then here I am about to go to my first push camp. So,
you know, we'll talk about these camps and where they are and how this all works. Now, we're making the assumption that the Olympics won't continue to be rescheduled and pushed off.
Right.
But assuming they come off the way they are, it'd be next winter is when you would be ready to go, correct?
Right. It would be about 17 months from right now. It's 2022, February 2022. Mm-hmm. I believe that's right. So, and it's in China. So, what we're starting to train for.
Throws another wrinkle into it somewhere along the line.
Exactly.
The bobsledding part, though, when the first day you heard, you said, you know, this might be something I could do. How did you gave me the background, but when did you convince yourself, I need to start training for this?
Well, I always had in the back of my mind, you know, football doesn't work out. I want to keep being a competitor. Mm-hmm. I want to put my heart into something, keep working physically, and you still got to pay the bills. So I obviously have to go out and get a job. You know, football doesn't provide that. But for me, as soon as I got done, I really didn't even take a break from training. I just stayed with it. I kept lifting, kept running, so it never really stopped. And then I started getting calls, and I thought, yeah, let's do this. That's something I always wanted to represent my country. That would be something that would be a great honor. And you know, this is all provided that I can make the team. There's a select few guys that they're bringing in, but there's 4 guys in a bobsled, so you got a decent shot there. So anyway, yeah, I never really stopped competing. Never really stopped working out.
You know, you mentioned the Tulsa, and there's such a Tulsa connection in the Abbott family, obviously.
Sure.
So much so, I think some of us were surprised you ended up over here and not over to Tulsa. But it does go back to that, and it took 2 or 3 conversations past that for somebody to say, hey, why don't you give this a shot?
Definitely.
But you couldn't have been thinking bobsled when you finally, when you left the Giants training camp.
No. When I left there, I kept checking my phone every hour, seeing who was calling me, trying to, you know, I'm still trying to play. But, you know, the further you go down that path and you don't hear anything, well, then that itch to be a competitor doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. And then you get an opportunity like this that comes along. And in this country, you know, we don't have Mighty Mite bobsled. We don't have any, like, that's not a thing. You know, over in Europe they probably do, but here it's not really, that's not a thing. So nobody really knows, you know, the technique. You don't have a neighbor that played college bobsled, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
So it's just something that they really recruit athletes from other sports. Right now, what I'm kind of feeling out is track and football is where they get their guys. And it depends where you're at on the sled for what sport you probably came from. And there's baseball guys. There's probably mostly football is what I would say, ex-football guys. But yeah, that's really how the recruiting goes for bobsled.
Long before your time, but the great Herschel Walker got involved in bobsledding back in the day.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe he brought light to the fact that, you know, if you can run with it and you can run over people, mm-hmm. maybe you could be physical on a bobsled.
Right. What I kind of have picked up so far, the other football athlete that they had was a wide receiver that got cut off of Green Bay. I can't think of his name right now. It kind of escapes me. But anyway, since him, I'm the next guy that has come from a football background. There's been multiple. Mm-hmm. But what I'm learning, talking to coaches and preparing for this camp, is that the larger you are in size, the further up on the sled you go, meaning you're either the driver or the second man up from the front, and then third, and then fourth is your 100-meter, your 40-yard dash guy. That's you know, he's pretty fast. He's going to be a 4.3 type guy, 4.4 guy. But you know, they'll get smaller and smaller as it goes. and a higher top speed. So, for a driver and a two-man, you're probably pushing about 25 yards, 25, 30 yards, maybe a little less depending on how quick you get in the sled. So, I mean, you got to have a quick explosion off the line, but you're not, your 40 time is honestly irrelevant. It's even less than that. It's half of that. So it's really how explosive you are, and how much weight you can put in the sled as well, because people don't know this, but there's limits, and it changes every year, so I can't really give you a number, but there's limits that they try and get us up to as close as we can as the weight limit, and still being as strong and as fast as possible.
Pusher or driver? Considered for both?
Right now I'm considered for both. He called me and he said, hey, right now we need to get you down and kind of get your pushing technique ready, and we've got to get you driving. And I said, driving? And he said, yeah, you're perfect for it. You need to be a driver. So that's something that kind of takes time. He said, I mean, people have a knack for it, but when you coach a driver, it's something that it really takes more years than just a couple years out from the Olympics. So there's guys that'll be 7-8 years out, and they start training and they finally make the Olympics. But a pusher can come in 6 months before the Olympics and make it. So it's a little bit different breed. I mean, it's as fast and explosive and as heavy as you can put in the sled is kind of what they look for.
Separate camps for both, right?
So they are separate camps, but right now with COVID, they're kind of combining stuff. I mean, there's going to be pushers at driving camp, and there's probably going to be some drivers at some pushing camp, because they just got to have to, make it work.
But in a non-COVID world,
right,
they would have separate camps, correct? You'd specialize in one or the other?
Right, you would specialize in one or the other for sure. The push camp is the one that more people are interested in. A lot of people just say, I just want to push and jump in, which that's exactly what I thought. I said, I want to just push as fast as I can and get in this thing and see what happens. But what they really try and recruit is to get people that can drive, because that's hard. It's hard to find good drivers. That's what makes the sport. A driver is really what makes the sled.
You really sound excited and passionate about this.
Definitely.
And obviously this is not something that you decided to do 2 days ago. I mean, you got a passion for it, for sure. You've stayed in good shape, though.
I appreciate it. I tried to. Not as good as you, though, but I've tried.
Well, but you're not 115 years old like I am either, so it's all relative. But, we were joking around outside. I wouldn't say you were on the cutting edge of the cowboy back, but you were in the early days
of the wake.
The cowboy back,
right.
Here at Oklahoma State. And now it's a term we throw out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was telling you, Veach told me one time, and he was kind of on the cutting room edge there, when they move people around. He said, look, I don't care what they call it. We're still offensive linemen that they throw the ball to every once in a while.
And he's exactly right. I have this stat that I would challenge, I've been throwing the ball, I think it was 6 times in 3 years, 6 times. Most of those came my junior and senior year, and every single time it was a first down. So Coach got to throw me the ball more. That's all I got. Now that I'm done, I can say that. Coach, you got to throw me the ball more. All those cowboy backs, feed them. So. Well,
and they all bring a different skill set, obviously.
Sure, definitely.
But primarily, I mean, you're there to, even if you're in the backfield, you're an extra blocker for that back who's carrying it.
Right.
So we want to create more havoc at the line of scrimmage.
Right.
But I do like the way cowboy backs are used. You can detach them. You can bring them inside.
Definitely.
You can bring them to the line of scrimmage. You can bring them in the backfield. They're pretty versatile people.
Yeah, definitely. You said it. Coach McIndoe always says that we're the Swiss Army knife, and he's right. If you look at it from week to week, we're using a different formation or a different play that requires a different skill set every week, and it's something that kind of goes unnoticed, but it makes the game plan. It really does. It just depends on what kind of defense that we're facing that week. A Gary Patterson defense is a little bit different than an Iowa State defense, So if you have a guy that is smart enough and tough enough to be in all those different situations, that can make a team go. So some of those guys that are playing now, and I get to watch them. It's really cool to see them develop and progress. Now that I'm gone and washed up, I can see them. Man, he's really gotten better from last week. From his cut blocks to now his pass pro is great. So it's cool to watch those guys as they progress from week to week.
Back before we get into this cowboy back, you were just a fullback, and basically all you did is lead block for somebody.
Right.
Back in the quote old days. But they have opened the book up to where you're a bigger problem defensively, because yes, Abbott may not drift out to the right on this play, but there's a chance you could drift out a little bit further the next play, and it doesn't take but a 3-yard pass to turn it into a 10-yard game.
Yep. One secret, it's not really a secret, but one secret Oklahoma State has is when we go tempo, our Cowboy backs are able to line up in so many different positions without them subbing. And if you have a guy that can do that, if he's tough enough to put his nose in there and block, and then go out there and line up as a number one receiver, and they have to, cover you now. One play comes to mind. It was in the Camping World Bowl my junior year. We had a play where we ran ISO up the middle. The very next play, we didn't let them sub, and I went out there as a number one receiver. And I wasn't the greatest receiver in the world, but what happened was because we went so fast, they double-teamed me, and they left James Washington on a one-on-one go route, and nobody could cover him, and he scored. So when you have a guy that can do that, it really opens up your offense.
What was your first thought? Because I know they recruit guys now and say, well, there's a potential of being a Cowboy back.
Right.
I don't know if that would be the deal maker, because I don't know how many kids want to come up, just be a Cowboy back and block and catch it every once in a while. But what was your first thought when you heard of this new concept?
Well, if you think about it, in high school, where do you play your best players? Probably quarterback, maybe linebacker, running back, unless you're a pretty big school, you're not going to play your guy at tight end who's one of your better athletes.
Right.
Unless you're a pretty big school, which I know that there are some out there. But for the most part, you're going to have to recruit a guy who's smart enough to learn a new position, new technique, everything new. And he's got to be tough enough, because if he was a quarterback, he probably didn't get hit that much. But, yeah, I just think that the position is something that is kind of evolving, and it's going to be more and more common. And we started a while back, and you just look around. I think the NFL is transitioning back to it a little bit. So I just think that it's something that's not going away. People say that the fullback's dying. That might be true, but the hybrid position is thriving. So
yeah, the fullback of old.
Right.
Back in the day, when you were just the lead blocker for an ISO play for the back.
Right.
Those days are over. Do you miss it? I mean,
yeah.
You're not that far removed, so there's got to be some missing going on.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy the things you miss, too. I got a chance to come back to the last game, the last home game, and it was weird. We have our Friday morning stadium run. That's the hardest thing we do.
Yeah.
And I remember I looked over there and I said, that was my lane right over there, and I don't miss it that much. I would go back. I would do it. So it was
once.
weird that things. Yeah, once, right? Maybe not 16 of them like we used to, but it's so weird. I miss being around all the guys, the team, just the camaraderie in the town, all that, and all the friends and people that you just kind of grow and develop with. It's literally the best time of your life. It is. And I know that it can feel like a drag sometimes whenever you got class and practice, but it's still the best time of your life. You're busy. Don't get me wrong. You're definitely busy, but those guys don't know how much fun they're having right now.
To some extent, we're all in this boat, but kind of put yourself in the football boat now with COVID. Tests, 3 tests a week. You might play, you might not play. Sure. You might practice, you might not practice. How would that be for you?
That'd be a nightmare. And I don't know how you recruit right now with people playing and high school teams playing and the next week not playing. And how do you compare athletes that you're looking at? I think recruiting would be a nightmare. I think preparing for your next opponent is going to be a nightmare. I don't know who they're playing or who they're not playing. I don't know if we're going to have our right guard. I don't know if we're going to have our cornerback. I mean, goodness, I mean, the coaches right now are underpaid, because this would be a nightmare to be a coach with all this going on, and all the things I got to do to keep kids away from each other and not getting sick. Yeah, I don't know how they do it. I really don't. It's
not necessarily a bubble like the NBA, but we've kind of created a semi-bubble here at Oklahoma State, kind of restricting the comings and the goings of the football team. Would that have been restrictive on your, if you were part of this, or being a team guy, you just do what you were told to do? But how difficult is that, especially on a weekend like this, where Mike Gundy's been pretty consistent? I mean, we're going to practice a little bit, but I give the kids off because I think they need physical and mental refreshment.
Sure, need a rest.
How difficult would that be? Would you have to make a decision? Do I go home? Do I not go home? Can I go home? Who do I go around when I'm at home?
Yeah, it's definitely going to take some discipline, and that's one of the toughest things to ask, 18 to 22-year-old kid to do is, hey, stay in your whatever they have, apartment, dorm, house, whatever they have on or off campus. Stay in, rest, watch film. I know that if the really good ones, they will watch film. They will take the extra time to get a good night's rest. The really good ones will. That's just the way it is. It's the guys that are in the middle of the road that they have to convince. The guys that might not be completely fully bought into let's go win a Big 12 championship and get in the playoffs and make some noise. But it's those guys that are just maybe a little bit younger of a player, maybe just not fully on board. Those are the guys you got to worry about. But those your real good players, your real leaders, you already know what you're gonna get out of them.
You guys have your own fraternity, former Cowboy backs, and we were just talking about it. You and Jarwin are pretty close. Jarwin turned that position into a rather lucrative living here of late with the Dallas Cowboys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know the numbers right in front of me, but good for him, right? That's pretty good. Come out of he wasn't drafted. He was free agent, did his pro day. Obviously had a pretty good career here, but the odds say that that's a really impressive thing to make it that far. The Dallas Cowboys, so couldn't be happier for him, and it couldn't have happened to a better person. That's one thing that I'm really proud of about him is, man, as good as a player as he is probably an even better person. He cares about everybody, treats everybody the exact same. So, just really happy for him.
How's he holding up after the injury?
He just had his surgery. Texted him a little bit ago, and so he's doing well. He's kind of same old Blake. He said, I'm ready to get back to work. So I don't even think it's been 24 hours since his surgery, and he's ready to get back to it, which he's always been that way.
Now, we're not playing doctor, but he indicated that perhaps maybe they found something less critical than it was before.
Right. They thought that it could be ACL and meniscus, and it turned out that it was just ACL, that's a pretty serious injury, but it's not as bad as it could have been. So anyway, he knows what's in the road in front of him, but I mean, I'm not too worried about him. I know that he'll do all the little things that he needs to do to get back to where he was.
What about some of the other guys you keep in contact with from that little small fraternity? Seton being one, I guess. Yeah,
Seton, he's in Oklahoma City. Jeremy Seton, great friend, great mentor, and that's a really cool thing about I mentioned making friends, going through this whole process. He's one of those guys that he helped me out as an athlete, as a student athlete, and now we bounce business ideas off each other all the time. We see how he's doing. We see, what kind of ideas or what is he looking at doing in the future. So it's just a pretty cool fraternity, like you said, to have those guys and, have lifelong friendships with somebody like that.
I go back to, and you can help me on this because you probably know the history of Cowboy backs better than I do. Who was the first group that we actually turned in to Cowboy backs?
So
was Veach on that first?
The very first one, this was not Cowboy backs, was Kai, and he was just a fullback.
That's right, yeah.
Kai was just a fullback. After that was Teddy, Seton and Teddy, and those guys were still fullbacks, and that was probably my freshman or redshirt year, pretty early. And then that year, Coach Singleton went, I can't remember where, he's in the pros now, but he was our running back and fullback coach. After that, we brought in Coach McIndoe in the spring, and we put the whole package together where it was Jarwin was a tight end, but now he was a Cowboy back, and Seton was our pretty much our leader at the position, and then Veach was a little bit like a year younger. So Veach and Jarwin were the same age, and Seton was the oldest. And then we pretty much went off that three-headed monster, and then after that was myself, Keenan Brown, Sione, and then now we're down to Logan Carter and Jelani Woods, and so that's kind of the evolution.
With all due respect, have we had anybody who looked as good as Jelani Woods?
Oh my goodness!
Physically,
looks like a monster.
I know it.
Yeah. Sometimes you just laugh. You just think, "Holy cow!" Yeah. Man, I think that with what he's got going, he'll be one of those guys that's a definite chance in the NFL. So, and that's all you can ask for.
You've been around the NFL. I got to think people in the NFL now, they want performance, they want production.
Definitely.
You can look the part, but you got to play the part
right
when they're paying you money. But I got to think scouts in the NFL just look at this guy and say, all right, he may not be this, but we can make him that.
Right.
We got to have him.
Sure. And one thing that I've kind of learned about coaches is every coach at that level thinks that they're the greatest coach in the world. So if you can convince them that you have the physical attributes, which he obviously does, if you can convince them that, then they will think I can mold him into whatever they're projecting him at, whether that be a tight end or receiver. Maybe they put a ton of weight and make him a tackle because he's got great feet. But I mean, whatever they see him as, he's one that you can convince and say, we'll at least bring him in for camp, or maybe we'll spend a 6th or 7th round pick on him, or whatever, And who knows? Maybe he'll bust out a little bit later this year, and he's still, what is he, a sophomore, junior now? I don't know.
Junior. Like he's been here forever.
It seems like it's forever, right? Yeah. But I mean, he's still got time to improve and work on his technique, and he could be a guy that's drafted pretty high at the tight end position. So,
as you go back over your time, you're kind of a legacy with the Giants because your dad. I mean, the Abbott name is there in the Giants organization. But you spent, and I still feel a little jilted that you didn't stay because you hung in there maybe longer than people would have thought. You were, I don't know if you were the last cut, but one of the last cuts. What was your experience like there in training camp?
Well, it's pretty crazy thinking that. Let me give you a quote that I kind of heard from a coach, and you tell me what you think of this. He told me that there's more talent walking around the streets of the United States than there is in the NFL because that's how much we've cut. So he said, we got our 52-man roster, and there's 32 teams, something like that. So he said, if you think about it, every year we got guys that it's really, really close. Outside of our all-pros, there's more talent on the streets because we have to cut them, and that's just the way it is, that the numbers work. And I thought about that, and now that I've had time to kind of digest it, I think he's right. I really do. There's a ton of talent in this country. There's a ton of good college players. It's outside of the all-pro guys, the guys that you look at and say, yeah, that guy's going to be in the NFL, your first-rounders, second-rounders. Outside of that, it is close. It is a dogfight every year to make the roster, every year to get a position. There's so much talent. There's a lot of people that, it's just a split of the hair difference in talent. So, you got to do every little thing that you can to convince them that this is my job.
Regrets that you didn't stay, but no regrets that you gave it everything you had in camp.
And this is something I tell my brother when we talk about it. I sleep like a baby. I sleep like a baby. I know I had some pretty good catches. I don't think I even missed a block. It just more so I thought was more so numbers. It's a numbers game at that level. But as far as the way that I played, I don't regret a thing. I went as hard as I could. I got to sleep every night. I studied film. So I don't regret one thing. Wish it would have turned out different, but don't regret anything.
The cerebral part of the game sometimes we forget too. But obviously, and we extolled your all Big 12, All-American academic honors. That goes hand in hand with your physical ability. But I got to think the thinking man is also very much part of the NFL now.
Yeah, more so than people believe, more so than people can see. That there's guys out there. There's a ton. If you think about it, there's a ton of guys who can run a 4.3, which that's really, really fast. Mm-hmm. But there are a ton of guys that can run a 4.3 and a 4.4 at wide receiver. So the talent is everywhere. If you can get a guy that is smart and tough, that is where you separate yourself, because there's talent everywhere. That's like the prereq, is that you have to have talent. It really is. Now, if you're a guy that will convince the coaches that you'll be tough and you'll do all the little things and watch film and be smart, and I can trust him to think on the fly out there, that is when you have your 10-year career. I've kind of had the luxury of talking to some Oklahoma State guys that have played, Charlie Johnson and guys like that. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I'm just kind of noticing is you can't be brain dead. You got to be a smart guy to play in the NFL, and that's something that people don't understand. That's one common misconception. Football players aren't dumb, I'll tell you that. Not in the NFL, they're not.
It's a cold, hard business.
Sure.
And I can't imagine the disappointment one would feel, especially because I don't know if you ever thought you were automatically going to make the squad, but you felt better about it than you did when you finally arrived there at camp.
Sure, yeah.
That has to be a crushing 2 or 3 minutes when somebody says, hey, Abbott, it's not in our hands. We got you fault in the numbers game.
There's probably two moments that I think kind of crushed me, and what you're talking about. One was on draft day, the Jets calling me and saying, "Hey, we're gonna draft you at this round," and then I look up there and they drafted a guy from West Virginia, and I thought, all right. And then the next one was after being with the Giants. Thought I played as good as I could have played. I couldn't think of a play that I didn't do my job. And I remember sleeping in my hotel room the night before, like, there's no way I'm not signed tomorrow. This is great. I'm going to be back here. I got to start looking for apartments. I was all excited and everything. And then after we broke out, they were talking, well, pick up your plane tickets and we'll see you guys later. And it was kind of like, man, I felt really good about the way I performed. And I remember also speaking to one of the coaches, and he said, keep your head up. I think another team will give you a call. It's just a tough business, and you should be very proud of how you performed here. So, and like I said, I don't have any regrets about. I did everything I could control, and that's kind of something I took from Coach Gundy. Is the only thing that you're responsible for is maximizing yourself. And he used to always say, they used to harp on that. And at the end of the day, that's really all you can do, and you can sleep like a baby because you did everything you could.
What is it you're doing now, other than waiting on somebody to get out of school here, right?
Well, yeah, I have a girlfriend going to school here. She was actually elected captain of the cheer team. Haley Glover, shout out, yeah. So we're very proud of her. She'll be graduating this spring.
She's got a bum deal too with this COVID, right?
Oh,
they
yeah.
can't perform. Yeah. They're in the stands or whatever.
Yep.
It's not the same.
She would have gotten 10 games of cheer, and this year she gets 4. So that's a tough way to go out for your senior year. But just kind of waiting on her to finish, and I'm just working a sales job here in Stillwater, just staying ready. Still go back home and work as much construction as I can because I love to work with my family and with my dad. I love to go back home and pour a little concrete. So that's something I'll never get out either. I'll always be a builder.
We were talking before you came in. There's no hills in Liberal to be bobsledding, right? Not that we know of for sure.
No, there's no hills. There's no trees either.
No practices. No. You have to build your own thing there, for sure.
Yep.
And of course, here we know darn well in Stillwater there's no practice facilities here to go bobsledding. But give us in the time we have left. Give us kind of the time frame for you as to what's next for you in the bobsledding venue, if you will.
Sure.
Where you going? When is it going to be? When are you going to find something out?
Right now, we're working on November 1st being a driving and pushing camp combined in Park City, Utah. So that'll be the next step. Kind of get with the coaches, work on some technique, start to get the building blocks laid for what's coming. But after that, the first half of the season has been canceled by the United States team. And we will try and get into the second half of the season to get some experience in. There's a couple cups which are basically circuits, tracks that you can go down, and there's some in Europe, some in the United States. We'll try and get some runs in. Then we'll try basically after that we'll work on next season, get some more runs in, and then you pretty much go to the Olympic trials and try and make a sled, which 2 to 3 sleds, most likely 2, will come from the United States.
And again, trying to target the Olympic trial date is probably futile because we don't know how it's going to be moved.
Right.
But if it went off as scheduled, when would that be?
That's a great question. I wish I had an answer for that, but they haven't even released that yet. They don't have anything for that, but it'll be a couple months, probably up to 6 months before the Olympics, so we can get all of our sleds and start working and get everything ready to go.
We're going to keep up with your progress. I know you and I text all the time, so we'll do that. And best of luck to you. It's great catching up, man.
Oh, yeah. I always have a fun time coming back. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, we didn't even get into half the things I wanted to talk. but
never do.
No, we never do. That's true. I think we've had you on about 5 times, and we never covered everything we wanted to cover. But best of luck to you in there, and we'll follow your progress.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's Britton Abbot, and appreciate him joining us here today. That'll wrap up Where Are They Now for another week.